The problematic prince. It's a shame you didn't wear that necklace today. It would have been nice to have taken a look at it, Your Highness, said the Baroness, seated at the far end of the table. The noble ladies had been talking about the fair that was due in Lechen within the month, but the Baroness suddenly changed the conversation to the Grand Duchess diamond necklace, which had made the whole of Lechen tumultuous for some time. I've heard that it is a very beautiful piece of jewelry. It's so wonderful to see the two of you getting along. I really envy you. The ladies about the table had been showering Erna with praise and compliments. Erna struggled to detect any thorns laced within the words, thanks in part to her lack of understanding of the social world. I didn't wear it because I felt it a little inappropriate for a luncheon, Erna said, trying not to show any signs of embarrassment. The flutter of her heart and the ache in her stomach did not cause her smile to falter, as she promised to show it off to them next time. The conversations turned back to words of encouragement, praise, and acceptance for the newlyweds. They came like the sweet scent of flowers in the garden. Erna managed to play the part of hostess very well, following the natural course of conversation without faltering, adding appropriate responses where needed. They had walked the garden, admired the flowers, and drank tea in the summer house. All that was making Erna tired, but her smile never once faltered. It wasn't until after Erna returned that she heard the rumors. The Grand Duchess, Erna Dniester, had swooped in to prevent the happy reunion of Bjorn and Gladys. She was only after his money, and the news coming out of Philia was that Erna had coerced Bjorn in buying the most expensive diamond necklace. Of course, there was no time to explain what really happened. People judged, defined, and exhibited their own opinions about Erna without ever really knowing the woman. All Erna could do was tread carefully and not let things get any worse. Slowly, all the guests left later on in the afternoon, until there was only one guest left, Princess Louise. Louise, I must thank you. Thanks to you, I was able to safely hold today's luncheon. Louise looked at Erna with the same smile she had greeted her with when she arrived. She sighed deeply and folded away her fan. The smile that she had been wearing all day faded. She looked so much like Bjorn. Say thank you. Invite her to a late dinner. Talk about fountains and flowers. Unable to continue the conversation she had planned out and rehearsed, Erna suddenly lost the flow of conversation and looked at Louise blankly. Many of Schubert's noble ladies had only come today because of Louise. She had come forward and persuaded those who had been sitting on the invites to go to the luncheon. Erna was glad that Princess Louise, who had been cold to her this entire time, finally decided to open up. On the one hand, Erna had been fearing this day, expecting an ambush, but at the same time, she was excited for it. Louise, if I make any mistakes, the reason I stand on your side is to save face for my brother and the royal family. I hope you don't think this is any sort of friendship. When Erna sat down opposite Louise, the princess pushed herself up from the table and stepped away. Still, you've been a great help, so thank you, Erna said. Can't you think about my brother and the royal family a little more? It's just the necklace that people are making noise about. Did you have to get such lavish and expensive jewelry abroad and cause such a stir? It was a birthday present. I did not ask for it. If you want to be extravagant, do it in Lechen. I won't get involved in that. Louise frowned as if to say she didn't want to hear any more on the matter. I also don't like letters asking for more friendship than is deserved. You're mistaken, princess. I didn't ask for anything. It was as simple to say hello, like any person would send to acquaintances, friends, or family. Erna's lips began to tremble, but she fought hard to keep her voice level and stern. Mrs. Fitz had told her that it was customary for members of the royal family to send each other letters now and then. It was especially important for the Grand Duchess, and it was one responsibility Erna was determined to take seriously. Yes, but Grand Duchess, we are not anything like those relationships. The wrinkles on Louise's brow deepened. Do you not think it's emotional violence toward me? Someone who is close personal friends with Princess Gladys, who is then expected to force a relationship with the Grand Duchess. Erna could not find the appropriate response. It seemed like every word Louise spoke was edged like a razor blade and designed to cut deep into Erna's mind. I just wanted to tell you that I am still friends with Princess Gladys, and my friendship with her is important to me. Of course, as the Princess of Lechen, I will stand by the Grand Duchess for my brother's sake, but please do not ask for more acquaintances than is absolutely necessary. And please, try and be a good fit for the Prince of Lechen. Once she had finished what she wanted to say, the princess left the summer house. Emotional violence? Erna understood the meaning of the words the princess had so coldly thrown at her, but she wanted to finish the social properly. Louise had just stood there, staring at Erna blankly as she said her farewells to her last guest. Louise left without saying another word. Erna slumped in the chair, letting out a long sigh. It was lucky that Louise rejected her before Erna had invited her to dinner. That would have been embarrassing. Bjorn was right. She didn't want to admit it, but she had to accept the fact. Should she live without expectations, taking for granted the hate from everyone who still loved Princess Gladys? No matter how many times she thought about it, she could not come up with a reasonable answer. Emotional violence. Erna was ashamed of that label attached to her. Erna sat in the chair and continued to repeat the question until the walls were painted the colors of sunset. Suddenly, she found that she missed her grandmother. Not bad, Bjorn said. He could scarcely believe the report he held in his hand. Bjorn approached the fireplace and tossed the report into it without hesitation. The repost of the atrocities caused by Count Hardy and his wife went up in flames. From now on, I want you to report to me every 2 weeks, Bjorn said to the butler who had brought the report. Yes, Your Highness, Greg the butler said flatly. It was on the night of his wedding that Bjorn decided to keep an eye on Walter Hardy. Even during his honeymoon, he had been receiving reports and telegrams. For a while, it looked like Walter Hardy was taking care of himself, touching on minor luxuries and investments, and as time went by, the fence got a little bigger. The report of the day was that Walter Hardy had been selling his son-in-law's name to raise investment money. It was still in its early stages, but it seemed like a lot of people were being affected by the name Prince Bjorn. Bjorn left the study after confirming the week's schedule. The conscious, ever-present smile faded as he climbed the stairs and walked down the long corridor. He had foreseen the Hardy family's lax behavior coming and was prepared for it. There was nothing to be surprised or angry about, and Bjorn was determined not to get involved unless they crossed a line. To appease a noisy child, give them sweets. Bjorn headed straight for Erna's room. Her Highness is not yet finished, Your Highness, said Karen. She quickly approached him when he came into the drawing room and bowed her head. After checking the time, Bjorn nodded happily and walked over to Erna's desk to sit down. There was plenty of time before the painter finished preparing. That's okay, I'll wait right here. Bjorn sat cross-legged in the chair. The maid bowed and continued about her business. Pavel. As Bjorn thought about the name, a strange sense of desolation came over him. He felt concerned by it. Bjorn looked about the room and found his gaze fall upon the golden antler he had given Erna, whole utterly under the influence of alcohol. She had tied a little ribbon at the top. His tight lips relaxed gently. It had been the weekend after the honeymoon that he had seen the ribbon trophy. He was leaning out of the window, looking at something. Then when he turned his eyes inward, he caught sight of the jagged shape. What the hell is that? He had said in surprise. There are so many trophies in this house. I tied a ribbon on mine to distinguish it from the rest, Erna said, looking up from her writing desk. She had the poise of calm and grace about her as she turned back to her writing, like someone completely unaware they had just done something out of the ordinary. When Bjorn laughed so loud, Erna gave him a confused look. That day, the ribbon tied around the trophy had been blue. Today, the ribbon was pink. It seemed like Erna changed the ribbon depending on the season or her mood. Bjorn smiled as he fingered the ends of the pink ribbon, just as the door opened and Erna stepped in. She wore a watery blue dress, adorned with gold, pearls, and delicate lace. She was more splendid and beautiful than Bjorn could have imagined. Bjorn stood in front of her with a satisfied smile. His gaze, which had been slowly examining the sparkling tiara, elaborately braided hair, veil, and dangling earrings, stopped on the nape of her neck. "Where's the necklace I gave you?" Bjorn's eyes narrowed as he considered the sparkling pearl necklace about his wife's neck. "It's just, I thought this necklace would look better with this dress." "Is that so?" Bjorn looked at the maids grouped up behind Erna, as if seeking their opinion. They looked about the room as if not noticing the prince's questioning glance. He liked the necklace. Either way, his wife was beautiful whatever she wore. Bjorn knew the reason his wife didn't wear the necklace was just because of aesthetic. "Bring it here," Bjorn ordered a maid. "Hurry up." The bewildered maid left and Bjorn turned to his wife. It didn't matter if he replaced the necklace, Erna was still his, but there was something about that pearl necklace that scratched his nerves. Erna lifted her sad eyes to look at Bjorn. "Bjorn, I like that necklace, Erna." Bjorn's tone was soft, but Erna didn't feel it. "Please wear it." It was the first gift Bjorn had chosen for her, and he wanted her to wear it for the portrait. It was the most precious jewel to Erna, no matter what anyone said, but she did not want to wear it for the portrait. It felt to her like she was showing off her extravagance, providing ammunition for the excitedly slanderous women of Lechen. Bjorn didn't seem willing to listen, and Erna couldn't muster up the courage to speak her mind. In the meantime, the maid eventually returned with the jeweler a box containing the necklace. Bjorn took the necklace from its box and placed it around Erna's neck. The tips of her closed lips trembled ever so slightly as the cold metal touched her skin. "You look beautiful, Erna," Bjorn said, smiling as he put the necklace on her. The compliments Bjorn gave her always made her heart flutter, but now they felt as cold and heavy as the necklace around her neck. "Thank you," she said with a laugh. She liked Bjorn enough to want him to be happy, so she didn't show any of the true emotions she felt. She hated herself for lying to him like this. It was a strange feeling. Pavel's hand was rigid as he sketched. He had drawn Erna many times before, but the fact that the Prince of Lechen, her husband, was stood right next to her made things a little awkward. He took a breath and recomposed himself, filling the quiet air with the soft rasping of charcoal on paper. They had chosen to do the portrait in the drawing room, where there were large windows that faced south. The space had a lot of vibrant blues, the color of the Lechen royal family. Pavel had painted a lot of aristocratic families over the years, but none of them had a mansion quite this size. It was actually quite intimidating. Seeing Erna here felt strange. He felt like he was meeting her for the first time. There was no sign of the girl he had spent his childhood walking the fields with. This was an elegant, noble lady that stood before him. Erna had feared that Pavel would greet her as he would do when they were growing up, but that did not happen. Pavel remained respectful as he said hello to the ducal couple. Pavel had tried to refuse the order of the art director. He no more wanted to do this than embarrass himself in any social situation, but the director was insistent and told Pavel that this assignment would elevate him to grand statuses. Pavel was well aware of this, but when it came to Erna, he had a hard time accepting the decision. He missed her a lot and wanted to see how she was doing, but he didn't want to open old wounds. It was a strange mix of feelings he had a hard time coming to terms with. In the end, Pavel decided that he was going to flat out refuse the assignment, but it was too late. The order had been given by Prince Bjorn, and Pavel was to be the artist for the royal portrait. The wolf seal on the letter confirming the order, and the appointment stuck in Pavel's mind when he first met the ducal couple. Erna looked up from fiddling with her fingers, as she always did when nervous, and Prince Bjorn looked at him too, with a sly smile. Erna, would Her Highness please raise her head a little? Thank you, Pavel said, stumbling over what to call Erna. At Pavel's request, Erna awkwardly raised her head. Is this all right? A little lower, sorry. Like this? Erna was trying to do as requested, but this time bowed her head a little too deeply. Still the same Erna, over-eager to please. Erna used to love posing for Pavel, but as soon as she got in front of an easel, she went as stiff as a plank of wood. He had always preferred to draw Erna doing something she was comfortable with, running in a field, reading a book under a tree, picking an apple, driving a goat. She was the sole reason he had perfected his croquet skill. As if she was recalling the same memories, Erna smiled shy and awkwardly. Those clear, kind eyes and sweet smile. Definitely the same Erna Pavel had always known. Here, just bow a little deeper, Bjorn said and gently moved her chin. Hands like this. He arranged the position of her hands so they sat a little more naturally. It showed that Bjorn had sat through a good many portraits. There, I think we are done now, Mr. Lore, said Bjorn, adopting his pose once more. Pavel felt like Bjorn was being more than a little arrogant as he sat straight-backed, but he could not complain. Erna was finally sat like a true model, just as he wanted. Pavel went back to his easel and started sketching again. There was no need to add comment about the prince's pose and posture. He was perfect. The sunlight shone bright between the two men staring at each other. Would you like to take a break? Pavel asked as he stepped back from the easel. Bjorn turned to see that Erna was looking a lot more pale than she usually did. He felt a little ashamed that the painter noticed it before he did, but he had been looking at them the entire time. Bjorn had completely spaced out. I do feel a little dizzy, Erna said, but I will be okay to continue if I can just rest a little bit. If you're tired, we can stop for the day, Bjorn said. No, that won't be necessary. Erna, I'm fine, really, Erna smiled, shaking her head. After Erna assured Bjorn she would be all right, she left the room with Lisa, leaving Bjorn and Pavel together. Bjorn went to sit on the couch and lit a cigar. He called Pavel over, who hesitated a moment before reluctantly going over to the couch. I'm sorry, I don't smoke cigars, Your Highness, Pavel said when Bjorn offered him one. Bjorn poured out a glass of whiskey and ice, offering it to Pavel, but again, Pavel declined the drink respectfully. Don't you enjoy drinking either? Bjorn said, taking a sip of it instead. I do, Your Highness, I apologize. It's fine, you're working, I get it, Bjorn said, ringing a serving bell and requesting the servant bring a cup of tea for Pavel. Mr. Lore, what do you like? Besides painting, obviously. Pavel turned to look at the prince. I enjoy reading. When I have any spare time, I'll go for a walk and read a book. Pavel answered with all the courtesy he could muster. He behaved politely, without seeming servile. Bjorn looked at him for a long moment. The model student that wasn't quite as boring as Leonid. Bjorn came to the conclusion that Pavel had quite a noble bearing about him. Had Erna decided to run away with him, she would no doubt still be playing house. He could almost see Pavel as a friend, or even a brother. When do you think the portrait will be completed? Bjorn changed his conversation as he brushed the ashes away. Pavel explained, carefully, his future work plans. Bjorn listened attentively, but even so, Pavel doubted he wouldn't remember half of what he said by this evening. Pavel stood up and returned to his easel. It seemed like the suffocation was probably caused by the confusing behavior of the prince. It was just as people had told him it would be. He was light and dignified, with a grace as if he were roomy. Even when he was relaxing, he did not let his guard down, always putting on airs. Just the fact that Pavel couldn't read or understand something as simple as a smile from the prince made him feel embarrassed. Pavel busied himself with sharpening the charcoal, ready to resume his sketch. The prince was finishing off the whiskey, standing in front of the window that overlooked the river. He then came round to stand behind the easel, playing with the remaining ice. "Keep going," the prince said, dissuading Pavel from putting down his palette knife. Bjorn looked over the canvas, then at the art supplies with an unenthusiastic eye. He was a man that moved slowly, took his time, as if enjoying a leisurely walk. It was only when he looked away from him that Pavel realized he had broken his charcoal. Is Erna really happy with this man? As if to erase the question, Pavel focused on sharpening the charcoal he had just broke. The sound of Pavel sharpening the charcoal sounded more like he was sharpening the tension in the silent room, filled only with the sound of Bjorn's footsteps and the tinkle of ice in an empty glass. "It looks good," Bjorn said, nodding to the workbench. Pavel clenched his fists without realizing it. "They were a gift from a very dear person to me." "Oh, a present?" Bjorn said, passing a glance over the brushes and paints back to Pavel. There was no emotion in his lethargic expression. "Pavel swallowed drilly. Her Highness has returned," Lisa said as she opened the doors. Bjorn and Pavel both looked over just in time to see Erna standing in the doorway with an awkward smile.